The following is a presentation of the Missouri Sports Network.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 23 here in season 1 of Missouri Milestones, the podcast right here on the Missouri Sports Network. It's October the 23rd, MissouriSportsNetwork.com, where everyone has a home field advantage. And as always, the Missouri State Highway Patrol remind us, hey, take that 3 seconds and buckle up. It's 3 seconds that could save your life. Excited to bring you this Missouri Milestones, the podcast, an actual individual who I actually played against coming up at the end of this. But the Missouri Milestones is a list that Kent Mueller from playing _sports, Guy Newcomb from at Scoreboard Guy on X put together probably a year and a half ago, or maybe a year ago, we started this, and the numbers just keep coming in, and we've added some things to it. And, hey, there's no membership dues, no secret handshakes, secret knocks on the door. You're automatically a member when you reach these milestones. Guy Newcomb alongside Kent Mueller. I'll turn it over to Kent before we get to our interview.
Yeah, we started Missouri Milestones with 1,000-point career scores for both boys and girls in basketball. We now have over 1,500 boys and over 1,300 girls. It won't be long before we have combined lists of those two stats totaling more than 3,000 Missouri basketball athletes. Those lists will continue to grow as we dig out more of Missouri high school history, and also as we record and recognize those who will cross that threshold each season going forward. Due to the strong response for the basketball career list, we have expanded to include 3 stats for football and 5 stats for volleyball, both for girls and boys. The popularity of these lists has naturally led to our podcast presentation of Missouri Milestones. In each episode, we sit down with one of these standout athletes to hear their story straight from the source, the work, the mindset, and the moments that make it happen. If you are a coach, an AD, an athlete, or a proud sports parent, this is the podcast made for you. The easiest way to see the list as they get updated is to follow us on X. Follow Guy Newcomb at Scoreboard Guy, and follow me, Kent Mueller, at plain_sports. By following us, you will get updated lists as they become available. Now that you are following us on X and you know how to contact us, let's get to the Missouri Milestones interview of the week. This week, we are going back in time a bit to a 1988 graduate of Seneca High. Shannon Crouch put up some amazing numbers on the football field. How about 7,476 all-purpose yards? How about 77 career touchdowns? Guy and I had the good fortune to sit down with Shannon for a great conversation. Missouri Milestones, the podcast, because history isn't just written, it's earned. Guy and I will be back with Shannon Crouch, right sponsor. You don't want to miss this one.
Any given Saturday. And a little work. And a little play.
Hey, little help?
And a truck that says no to nothing.
Hi, Dad. Can I give them a ride?
Yeah.
The Silverado Trail Boss and Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
Leaders know there's no guide to greatness. When everyone else says something can't be done, they know it only hasn't been done yet. True leaders weather the fiercest storms and look deep within themselves to rise above and help others find their way forward. At Great Southern Bank, we're proud to partner with visionaries that help raise the tide for all of us. And when you're ready to bring your vision to life, we'll be right behind you with award-winning support.
What rhymes with great?
Participate.
Where does greatness start? Here, in the classroom. On the stage.
In the pool.
On the field.
Where will your greatness take you?
To better grades.
to more friends.
Be great.
Hey, welcome back to Missouri Milestones, the podcast here on the Missouri Sports Network, MissouriSportsNetwork.com, where everyone has a home field advantage. Guy Newcomb alongside Kent Mueller from Playing on Sports here on this Thursday, and we are certainly pleased to welcome into the show 1988 Seneca High School graduate and current chief of police at the city of Lamar, Shannon Crouch. Shannon, thanks so much for your time today.
Oh God, thank you for the invite. I look forward to these all the time. Enjoy it.
Well, I tell you what, Shannon, you and I graduated the same year. Unfortunately, I don't know that we ever played against each other because I was injured in the game my senior year. I didn't play that game. You were injured in the first half of that game at Mount Vernon. But tell us, over 7,700 total yards in high school. Tell us a little bit about those memories. Maybe going back to even your freshman year, because I know you spent a lot of time on the field. You carried the ball a lot of time, 880 carries in your career. So tell us a little bit about your memories.
Well, playing football at Seneca under Tom Hodge, was a learning experience that has lasted a lifetime. And it wasn't just the stuff that we done on the football field. It was the leadership that extended well beyond the end zones or the sidelines, if you will. But I remember moving into Seneca. I was an outsider. My parents weren't from there. I wasn't from there. And, and I started playing defense. That's where I was at. I was an outside linebacker, loved it, and ran a little bit of tailback, as a freshman. And actually, Scott Cooper and I, we got to play quite a bit at our freshman year on the varsity level with the guys. And of course, Scott was our quarterback, but as a freshman, he was like our so he played on the line, and our roles completely transitioned like they normally do in high school from your younger years on up. But I got the opportunity. Our first game of the year, our sophomore year, our running back, which was Jerry Hembry, he got hurt. And I hate to be cliche about it, but I went in as running back and never looked back after that. I kind of found my spot, if you will. And the relationships and the camaraderie that we had is second to none. Obviously, we're all older now and retired and got our own families and grandbabies and everything. We don't talk as much as we used to, but we still communicate back and forth. But Tom Hodge was he was a developer. He was a leader. He emulated every fine quality that any coach would ever aspire to be. That's the stocking cap. Everybody remembers the stocking cap that Tom Hodge wore forever. And, Tom was not a yeller as a coach. But boy, when he would come up to you, and he would get real close and he'd grab your shirt. And he'd talk through his teeth. You knew that you needed to pay attention. And, he was a great person to emulate your lifestyle afterwards on. There's much more to life than football.
Are there games that you can recall, and there are for me as well, that I would like to go back and play again? Maybe a game got away from me, or maybe it was a state championship game that you got to play in that were just great memories. Like, man, I'd like to do that again. Are there games that you really look back at and say, man, I'd like to go play that one again?
Yeah, there are a few, but I would be totally amiss not to say, I appreciate the fact of the numbers that were able to be built in my high school career, but none of that would have been possible without the old line up front, you know, the Claude Merrimans, the Chad Nolans, Brad Hembrys, Chad Smiths, Eddie Broderick, Travis Holcomb, Jeff Howard, you know, all of those guys done their job. So I just happened to be the guy carrying the ball, you know, without them doing it. But man, I think the game that sticks out in my head the most, and I actually think this game's actually on YouTube. Somebody put it on there. But I think it was the Carrollton game. And they were supposed to come down and just whoop the thunder out of us our senior year. They came down. It was the first time I was ever privy to a tailgate. These guys come into our facility and they broke out their barbecue grills. They were grilling a steak and everything. And we're like, what the heck is going on here? We'd never seen that. And, you know, I think we won that game 58-6. I think I got to play right at 2 quarters of that game and touched the ball 18 times and had over 300 yards. And, you know, that was a game. I still remember that. I would tell my boys, you know, growing up, and even my daughter. But you know, I said, "There's like it. Whenever you break one, and you know, I said there's just nothing like it." And I could always hear the roar of the crowd. You know, whenever I would break one up the middle or cut the edge on the outside, and no one was around. You know, that game is always stuck in my mind. The 2 state games that I played in, I don't know if you call it the state championship curse or whatever, but I've always said the 2 worst games of my high school career. You know, I never felt that the performance was up to par, if you will. You know, even though there was good things happening in those 2 games, don't get me wrong. You know, we lost our junior year and senior year we won, but it just in my eyes only, you know.
As you look back, you know, who were some of the biggest rivalries, the games, maybe Big 8 conference games, and the Big 8's changed obviously a lot since we were in high school, but who was the rivalry game that you really looked forward to getting up against?
Oh my gosh, everybody in the Big 8 conference was a rival to Seneca. You know, I remember, I think my sophomore year, it was a big thing, Lamar, and it was at Lamar, I believe. It was either Lamar or Aurora. I can't remember now that I say that. Was when I went over 1,000 yards the first time. And I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. I hit a milestone and not knowing what it was, you know, and then the next couple of years, well, I'd met that milestone in 4 weeks or so. But the Lamar was always a huge Big 8 rival with Seneca. McDonald County was always a big rival for Seneca. Monette was, I mean, obviously everybody in the Big 8, I mean, you could beat each other in any given Friday, right? But both of them, all of those teams, it was just who was going to have the upper hand that day.
Well, the game that sticks out to me, of course, I was at the game because it was at Mount Vernon, your senior year, our senior year. And we find out, you know, just prior to the game, number one, I wasn't going to play. I had kind of a bummed up knee issue, and my dad said, hey, probably ought to sit this out. And Patrick Oschlager didn't play, but he had broke his ankle against Webb City earlier that season. So we're standing on the sidelines, and then we find out that Shannon Crouch isn't going to play. We thought, well, we're going to win this game.
Yeah.
And you did not play in the first half. And in the second half, you talked Coach Hodge into strapping your dislocated shoulder underneath your shoulder pads and came out and rushed for over 200 yards in the second half, and we got beat 36-30. What do you remember about that game, and how did you talk Tom Hodge into letting you play?
This was, I think Coach Hodge probably let me play because he was sick and tired of me yipping on his heels, saying, "Coach, let me in. Coach, let me in." He felt like, "Get out of here. Go in finally." But, yeah, no, that was a very, very good game. And like we said, it was, I think at halftime, if memory serves me right, you guys were actually ahead. I think at halftime. And of course, I think we went into the gymnasium there is where our halftime was at, not in the locker room like they are nowadays. But, I was just begging all the coaches, like Coach Simpkins, Coach Hughes, Coach Hunt, you got to talk to Coach Hodge. You got to let me go in and play. You got to let me go in and play. The week before, because I dislocated shoulder against Webb City, and we won that game, which was another Big 8 rival back in the day. But I had a brace, but my mobility, I think it only let me have like 18 or 24 degrees movement. That was it. And, I got to go in, and I think the first couple of runs, I made some pretty good yardage, and Kevin Reinhardt. For those who don't know, Kevin Reinhardt, in my opinion, is the best official ever in the state of Missouri in high school football. I love Kevin Reinhardt to death, and I run the ball, and I'm yelling that I was back or something like that. Kevin helps me up, and he says, "Shannon, you need to calm down a little bit." Because back in the day, you could do that. The officials could do that, and the athletes would adhere to what they were saying. But as the game went on, we kind of went back and forth on scoring stuff. And there at the very last, I can't remember how many minutes left or how many seconds was left in the ball game. But, one of the pass plays that we had, for me, I'm split out to the right. And, I think we've even talked about this before, Guy. I think everybody in the stands and everybody on the field knew where the ball was going, and Coop dropped back, and I went out to the I done a little end pattern sitting in the middle. I can't remember if I was exactly in the end zone or what, but he threw the ball to me. I caught it, and it was the go-ahead touchdown on that game.
Yeah, it was, I want to say it was 21-12 at half. We were up, and then we got beat 36-30.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly on that play right there, because you didn't have to kick the extra point. The game was over. And but no, it was a lot of fun. And then, later on that same season, we end up, both of us go on a recruiting trip to Pitt State, and we're there together. And do you remember who our chaperones were that day from Pitt State, the players?
He went on to play pro ball for the Seahawks. Monty Weathers, and let's see, John Rod was there.
Yep, John Rod.
Bailey was there.
Bailey.
Yeah, that's that was kind of the ones that I remember sticking out in my head.
Yeah, well, they didn't. I mean, Bailey was a year or 2 years ahead of us.
Yes.
But he kicked a field goal against Mount Vernon to end the game, and he didn't. That's the only field goal he kicked all in his entire career, and they beat us. And he reminds me of that all the time. But
yeah, and his hamstrings probably still pulled from that too, to this day.
Yeah. And, after high school, you decide to go to Pittsburgh State and play, and tell us just a little bit, just the 1 year there, but tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah. Well, I had I chose Pitt State because at that time Dennis Franchione came to our house and persuaded me to come to visit Pitt State, and then of course I was over, and guys like yourself, you got John Rod there, you got Scott Bailey there, Blaze Bauer was there. Of course, I didn't play against him, but there was a lot of people that I had played football against. And even though we were on different teams, mortal enemies, right? Because you're on different teams, but there's a camaraderie there because you know each other. And I thought at the time that date would be a good fit for me. And made a lot of good friends there, ball there at Pitt. And I wouldn't say I was a rising athlete or anything, but my yards per carry stayed the same. I think in college it was like 8.2 yards a carry or something like that. But obviously the shoulder injury haunted me, and bigger, faster athletes. When you got defensive linemen running a 4.6 40, and they outweigh you by 100 pounds. My body just couldn't handle it anymore, and it was a decision that I made, and after that, I just went to work, started a family, and still married to the same girl. Got my high school sweetheart Fonda, and we've got kids and a boatload of grandkids. It was all worth it.
Again, we're visiting with 1988 Seneca graduate Shannon Crouch, who's currently the chief of police in Lamar, Missouri, retired highway patrol. You were a motorcycle highway patrolman as well, but tell us a little bit about, making that decision there to go into the highway patrol. Who influenced that?
There was a guy a long time ago, back in 1992. I went to my very first academy. And I started out in Seneca as back then it was called part-time or reserve officers. And there was a trooper by the name of Steve Dorsey. And I still talk to Steve quite a bit. And, he just come up to me one day and he said, "Hey, you ever thought about being a trooper?" And of course, I was excited that a trooper was asking me, "Hey, you ever thought about being one of us?" And, at that time, a trooper had called an inquiry card for you. I had to take a test with the highway patrol. And he filled one out for me. I took my test the first time, didn't make the cut, and it happens. And then waited a few years and done it again. And then, of course, I made it through and graduated in 98 from the Highway Patrol Academy. Spent 26 years as a Missouri State Trooper. But my creditable years of service, because of all the time that I had built up, sick time and that other stuff, put me to 27 and a half years of credible service, if you will. But those times as a trooper, and I got to meet a lot of people. I met Herschel Walker several times on events that I was at. I got to do the NFL draft, done numerous dignitary projects or escorts and things of that nature. I was huge in veteran affairs. I escorted those guys across the state all the time as a motorcycle officer. But that job as a trooper, that was a good fit for me. It gave me a good life, good career, provided for my family, and good Lord kept me safe the entire time, whether I deserved it or not. But it was a good career. And then I retired in February of 2024 is when I retired.
You just can't give it up. So now you're the chief of police there in Lamar, Missouri, following in the footsteps of one Wyatt Earp.
That's right. That's right. And I'm looking for that Shetland pony to ride around. No,
very good.
It's a good community here. I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to what this community, what the police department can provide for this community. We've got lots of goals, lots of ideas. We've got a great assistant chief, Toby Luce, who actually was our age. We played sports against each other, and and we talked about that just the other day. He said, "Hey, you remember that one basketball game?" And I stopped him right there. I said, "I was a horrible basketball player." I said that was nothing I could do. The only thing I was allowed to do was jump, get a rebound, and pass the ball out to the wing. Don't dribble, don't shoot, don't do it, nothing else. That was my instructions as a basketball player.
Again, Kent Mueller's alongside, and Kent is in the Kansas City area, and he's been helping us put together these lists on the Missouri Milestones, and I'm sure he's probably got a question or two for you as well, Shannon.
Go right ahead.
First of all, I don't want to make it sound like you played a long time ago, because I played over a decade before you did. Okay. But, and I mean, it wasn't quite the leather helmet era, but it was, it wasn't quite what it is today. What do you see in the changes in style of play for high school football back then, the late 80s and now?
That's a very good question, because I spent 19 seasons coaching youth football, and I started coaching youth football before I ever even had kids. And the main reason I wanted to do that was because I wanted Coach Hodge was always great about, saying, I'm going to add on to the things that you've already been taught, that you've already learned. Someone else is going to lay the foundation. Someone's going to put the walls up. Someone else is going to put the roof on, and then we're going to clean the inside up. And I always wanted the kids to have the proper instruction on how to play the game. And back in the day, I hate to say it, but you did, people would lead their heads. My goodness, it was a thing back in the 80s. Football games last 6-7 hours. Because there'd be so many flags. I remember whenever they come out with the rules that you couldn't do a slobber knocker on a someone that wasn't paying attention. The long snapper always he was a sacrificial person. He would snap the ball. He would turn around to see if his snap made it back to the punter, and the linebacker would just drill him. Well, now you can't do that stuff. And so, which is a good change. There's no telling how many times all of us athletes played games. We were all concussed and had no idea, only because it was like, are you bleeding? Is it broke? Then you're okay. Are you hurt or are you in pain? All of them's kind of gone by the wayside. And the ergonomics that they have made for the shoulder pads, the helmets, the spinal pads, rib pads, all that stuff is a great change.
Well, you mentioned the slobber knocker being legal. That brought back a bad memory. I was out of the play. I was near the sideline. The play was clear over on the other side. I didn't see him coming, and I wound up out of bounds, and I didn't know where I was. So you can't do that today. Okay, and that's on the field. What about changes of or sense in the area of training, nutrition, improvements from back in the day to now?
Yeah, this stuff, and having a couple boys. I've got one. My youngest boy, he's a pitcher at Pitt State. That's where he's at. And then Cade, he ended up being a professional boxer for years. He's retired now. But, we always talked about back in the day, you had 2 weeks of weights that you had to attend during the summer. And you had a weight class that was part of your 7 hours of school. And, we ran sprints. And nutrition was, did you get anything to eat today? Here's you some crackers. It wasn't, people weren't counting their carbs or proteins or macros. They weren't feeding the machine like they are today. And Coop, which is our youngest boy, he's 6'2", 220 pounds, and he's a machine. And, and this guy, he watches what he eats. We don't eat a lot of processed foods at our house. And he is constantly working out and doing plyometrics to build his strength, flexibility, all that stuff that we didn't even think about back in the day, and athletes now are bigger, they're faster, they're stronger. And it's amazing to me, because I always think, back in our time, if we would have had the same opportunities that these kids had now, there's no telling what athletes would be like. I was a guy that I used to lift weights at home in a mail bag. I didn't have weights, so I put rocks in a mail bag and put a rope on it, and that's what I'd do. I'd push a bale of hay up and down the valley at our house just to strengthen my legs. And I can only imagine, and I ran a 4.40. if I would have had all that stuff, if I wouldn't have been able to hit that world-class speed, that 4.1, that 4.2, you know, and it just amazes me because I look at these guys now, and you got 6'6", 385-pound linemen that are running sub 540s. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, you mentioned the weight training. I remember we had a barbell that was literally, it was a bar, and each end they were the big old-fashioned coffee cans that had been filled with concrete and set on each end. Yep. And nutrition was a double cheeseburger at Ricky's Cafe.
Yeah, exactly.
And I watch our two sons. You mentioned yours, and you know they're now around 30. They continue to train and compete in different sports in different ways, and I watch their nutrition in awe. You know, so it's something that, and you are correct. What if we had that knowledge back then, and that discipline back then, and those things, and which means that, gee, in another 40 years, what's it going to be like? It makes it exciting to watch.
Yeah, it does. I agree with you 100%. We're big college football fans at our house, much more prior to NIL deals. But these college athletes are unbelievable now, and kudos to them, you know.
Right.
All right. Well, very good. Well, Shannon, as always, it's always great to catch up with you. I was talking to Scott Purrier, last night, and I was kind of telling him about this coming up, and he said, you be sure and tell him hi. That was my first kind of experience, at the news leader was covering the Seneca Indians, and he said I got to interview him a few times, but he wanted me to make sure I told you hello.
Well, you tell Scott I said, hey, right back.
All right, very good. Hey, you're watching Missouri Milestones, the podcast here on the Missouri Sports Network. Certainly glad you've tuned in, and as always, the Missouri State Highway Patrol reminds us to take that 3 seconds and buckle up. It's 3 seconds that could save your life. Be safe, be smart, and be here tomorrow.